Welcome to the next episode of the Ecom Growth Show. I'm your host, Danon Coleman. This is sponsored by Ecom Triage, and I've got with me Freddie and Adam from Capybaras. Did I say that right, guys?
You did, yeah.
Okay, good. So we're going to be talking about why Mexico, why LATAM, how do you get into it? What are the benefits of going there? What are the different companies that you can work with to go in there? Obviously, Capybaras is one of them. So why don't we start off with Freddie? Could you introduce yourself? What's your history and all that? And then Adam, you after that.
Definitely. Thank you, Danon, for having us. Hi, everyone. So I'm Freddie. I'm from Argentina. That's where my accent is coming from. I've been living in 2015, launched my first brand to 7 figures. In 2018, I realized that what I was doing is pretty much the same for every private level on Amazon world. So I decided to build an agency, return to Argentina, hire a team, and provide support. We specialize on launching Latin America brands in the beginning, Latin American brands into US. And now with Capybara, it's a spin-off, and we're doing the opposite. We're talking with our colleagues, 7 figures brands plus in US, and launching them into Mexico. Amazon Mexico first and Mercado Libre later.
Okay. All right, sweet. And Adam, what about you? What's your history? I feel like you and Freddie's you went to LATAM and he came to America around the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty much is the story, really. I mean, we were both in Amazing Selling Machine 6. We went to our first Amazing Selling Machine conference in 2016. We met in Austin, and we just clicked right from the part. One of his good friends crushed his brand, spoke on the stage, and then that evening we were out networking. As we all know, that's when the relationships and the magic sauce is made, right? Networking after the event. And Freddie and I just sat there for a couple hours and just talked about everything. And then with me being bilingual, and I just, started speaking Spanish, and we just connected immediately.
That's why I can't understand you some of the time.
Yeah. So I've been down in Mexico for 12 years now.
Wow.
So it's actually funny. Sometimes my brain will want to switch over to Spanish words all the time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that because I'm bilingual, but my two languages are English and bad English. So I've always wondered, like, there's got to be like some kind of mental click back and forth when you're going from English to Spanish or any language. And I've met people that know 3, 4, 5, 6 languages. I'm like, I don't even think I have the brain processing power for 2 languages,
Well, my neighbor.
It's a matter of practice. Maybe, do you practice any instrument, or do you play an instrument?
I play my wife's heart.
But I feel it's pretty much the same when, for example, guitar players, you keep hearing the song all the time and you imagine what you're doing. It's pretty much the same with the language. Once you practice and one is rolling
it becomes
out,
native.
It is native, and the pleasure of being able to communicate and share with others, like in a band or even with a local culture, that's where magic happens.
Yeah, I would. So I used to play the piano. I was never formally taught, but we had a piano in our house for my entire life living with my parents, which was actually only 16 years, and they had a piano. In fact, they only haven't had a piano for the last few years. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like, you get a feel for where the keys are and you know exactly what sounds that is going to come out. And then once you get familiar with it in the music world, you go, okay, now I know what I'm doing. Then you can start producing music. I guess it's probably, all right, you know what? I'm going to put language into the field of music, mentally speaking. That actually makes a lot of sense for me.
And that was the same thing that happened for me. So after 6-7 months living in Mexico, my ear really started to click. Because with a lot of times, maybe it was just getting used to the speed or the tone and all of that. I had no problem speaking. It was just, the ear and that kind of stuff. So about 6-7 months in, just completely probably similar to the piano. Once you got that flow, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. So.
Yeah, for me, of all the Latin languages, I actually think that Mexican is the hardest. And I grew up in Southern California. I had a lot of Mexican friends, went over to their houses, and their mothers would only speak Spanish. But the pace, it's like up, down, so I never was able to catch that speed. But Anyhow, we're not here to speak about language. This is not a podcast about language and love. Let's talk about e-commerce. Let's talk about Mexico. So I've got 5 questions for you, and I'm going to start off with number 1 because this is the first one, so it has to be number 1. Why Latin America and why Mexico FBA?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one. So for those of you that have been selling on Amazon for a while, I started selling in 2016, and even then, cost per clicks were nice and cheap. You didn't need outside traffic yet. You could get some ranking at a low cost, not a competition with headline search or other things. So think of that.
Didn't even exist back then, I think.
Right. Think of those low cost per clicks 8, 9, 10 years ago. And that's similar to cost per clicks right now in Mexico. You're going to have 1/5 to 1/10 the cost per click, not as much competition, because I just read a study. Most sellers only focus on 1 or 2 marketplaces. And then the people that I've met this past week, I was in Las Vegas for MDS Inspire and Prosper. And the ones that I've found that really insulate their business and marketplaces is they've diversified, and they're in a lot of different marketplaces, and they're also on many different channels. So right now, a lot of companies are like, oh, I'll just turn on NARF, which is North American Remote Fulfillment. However, it limits a lot of brands. You can't send in supplements, no topicals, anything eaten by animals or humans, and any toys for ages 3 years and younger. So with that, you can't even get a good test. So with that, the marketplace is there. So sometimes you'll see vendors or wholesalers, but they'll do an FBM down here. And so getting into FBA, you automatically get ahead up on the competition. And then from right there, you can just immediately scale. And Mexico already has 13 fulfillment centers, constantly growing. They're investing billions this year. Billions in Mexico alone. In my city in Querétaro, they're building an MWS data center for Mexico and Latin America. So it's a huge emphasis for Amazon right now.
Wow. Okay. So 13 fulfillment centers. Obviously, Mexico there's a lot to it. It's not just the spring break areas, right? And so what about the buying base? Because what I always heard was that forget about Amazon Mexico, go with Mercado Libre. Amazon has just a fraction, infinitesimal fraction of the buyer base that Mercado Libre is. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, you want me to take it?
Yeah, Fred, it's all yours.
Well, actually, for those who doesn't know, Mercado Libre is like the Amazon for Latin America. It's originally from Argentina. It started to be kind of an eBay, and then it muted or switched more into Amazon. It's pretty much exactly the same. You have the rankings, you have reviews, you have similar to PPC, but it's more like Walmart maybe. You have lightning deals, you have FBA, like Prime, that is called Full. You have everything exactly the same. Like it's a copycat, one of the other. It is super big in Latin America. Most of the countries are Mercado Libre buyers, right? The only country where Mercado Libre and Amazon is sharing the market share is in Mexico. It's like, I would say 60 Mercado Libre, 40 Amazon.
Okay, that's a lot different than the last time I heard about it. It was like maybe 10% Amazon, 90% Mercado Libre. But my data is quite a few years old at this point, 3, 4, 5 years old, maybe.
Yeah, no, Amazon is growing fast during pandemic, especially 2020. Amazon Mexico grew 50%. It's just a matter of culture. Many people used to just go to the store, purchase cash, and take it home. 2020 pandemic, people got used to getting to the platform and never left. So what is happening right now is, you were going to say something about it.
I was just going to say that's like those of us in America that order our groceries from whoever delivers groceries. Nobody wanted to go into the store wearing a mask, so you just go on your phone and be like, cool, I need this, and then somebody would bring it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's where I've seen the big shift. Because I've been down here for 12 years now, and all of the years heading up to the pandemic, it just wasn't the Amazon that I knew from the States. The shipping, the selection, all of that. And then the pandemic hit. And then Amazon was like, whoa, we've got something here. Because Mexico, population, 130 million. people still have, families 2, 3, 4 here. That's still a commonplace. So it's a growing population. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm just going to go into Canada. Canada's entire population is 40 million.
Is it really?
Yeah. Mexico has 64 million e-commerce shoppers, average each month. So right there, you've already got 64 million, which is more than the entire population of Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so right there, it's huge. Freddie?
Well, yeah, what it's saying, Adam, is basically talking about big numbers. We can say that Canada is pretty much 10% of what you can do in US on Amazon, right? Now, Mexico, we're doing between 5 and 8, but it's growing. It's the fastest growing market on Amazon. There's around 20% or 25% year over year since 2020. So it's a matter of when it's like Amazon 2013, where there are more buyers than sellers, where the cost per click is super low, and you can grow 20% year over year just because the marketplace is growing 20% year over year, without stealing or without, taking some of the market share of the other players. So having said that, there are many brands that they are selling into Mexico, like with a remote fulfillment, just by allowing Amazon to sell in Mexico. We're experiencing.
But I'm sure you don't get the same exposure, right?
No, you're not in the first page. It takes time to arrive, and you have to pay an extra fee. So in numbers,
As the buyer.
Yeah, as a buyer. You're not in the first page. Once, if a Mexican guy want to purchase something and then scroll down, it comes a time where it says, okay, those were the Amazon Mexico products. Then here are the US. The shipping time is higher. Fees are off. So when they switch from remote to physically in Mexico, we see an increase of 5x the amount of sales.
Okay, that's not nothing. All right.
No.
So then, all right, here's the next question then. How do you get started in Mexico? What are the steps? So, and actually, let's take a real life example here. I have, supplements. I'm not going to use my supplements. I have knives, right? I sell knives. What do I do?
Well, the first thing you need to do is, first you want a little bit of back history. So for years, people could use a different tax ID. The tax ID in Mexico is the RFC. People would use RFCs from an importer, from their shipping company. And these people that would say, hey, you can use my tax ID, they would charge quite a markup. But people would say, well, I don't have to file the paperwork. I don't have to do this, and this. But they're paying a large percentage of either their inventory or their sales. And then in December, Amazon corporate, Mexican government got together and said, okay, we got to clean this up. E-commerce is growing substantially in Mexico. So the first thing is you got to set up your entity, which is not that expensive. Similar in the US, under $1,000. You set up your entity. And when you set up that entity, from there, depending on the product, you start filing the paperwork to have your permission to import. So what you do is you get that entity set up, get that import, and then from there, during that process, a little bit of paperwork, get your logistics, and then you can get your brand launched in Mexico in 2 months or less on average.
From start to finish.
Yeah, from start to finish. If you just get your paperwork in quickly, if you're on it every week, just doing, crossing your T's, dotting your I's each week, it's not a lot of work. That's where also too, where we come in and make everything streamlined for you. You as a brand owner.
I was going to ask, who do you go to for that?
Yeah, it's a combination of us and some Amazon partners and Amazon themselves. So
okay,
with
so
us,
you guys are partnered with Amazon?
Yes. Yeah, I was able to find the Latin American expansion team in December, and Freddie and I have teamed up with the Amazon team, and we help each other out with getting leads and pitching to brands, and we pitch together. So Amazon's able to use their internal reports, and they're able to come to the brands, and they're able to say, hey, this is your true opportunity. Because Freddie and I were using third-party tools and Chrome extensions and so forth, but then having Amazon, they're saying, hey, this is the true market share. This is what you're going to see on average for the niche for cost per click. This is the growth month over month. So we're able to get those internal reports and get a real opportunity. So with us, you've got Amazon helping us out. You got Freddie and I doing your full Amazon setup, everything. Monthly, PPC, photos, titles, everything. Get everything ready in Spanish. Full management service, white glove. And then there's 2 services that are certified Amazon partners that they're pretty much an accounting/law firm. They help you get your entity set up. And then after that, they help you do your monthly filings. One of the things different in Mexico with taxes is here, they do monthly taxes. So these services.
I love taxes. The more the taxes, the better. The more I love paperwork too. It's my favorite.
But these guys are experts, and with them, they're able to make everything easier for you. They're able to really lower your tax bill in Mexico, and then help you set up your bank account here. And you don't even have to set foot in Mexico for any of this.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it reminds me of the days of Avask for the UK. Freddie, you were going to say something?
Yeah. I wanna put it some story behind this. As an Argentine, I usually go to the events with Messi shirts. Messi, a football player. Everyone knows that I'm from Argentina. Everyone knows that Adam is living in Mexico. So they were asking, hey, I want to go to Latin America, but it's so difficult. Everything is a mess. I need support. And we said, I don't know. We launched from Latin America into US, but so year after year, we realized, okay, we need to do something about it. If we are not doing it, who is gonna do it? So then we get together, and our proposal is super simple: is getting to Latin America without stressing. So how does it work? Okay, you sell knife, excellent. Can you send me your storefront? Yeah, your storefront link. So we take care. We look at the products. We look at the competitors in Mexico. We look at the cost per click, and we can provide you a real, analysis of the revenue you're gonna have, and if we have the cost, the profit you're gonna have. Like simple and clear. This is the money you're leaving on the table in Mexico. It could be interesting or not, but that's clear. And if you happen to say, yeah, let's move forward, I wanna launch in Mexico, we take care of the rest. We introduce you to the Amazon partners. We help you with the logistics, with the labeling, if it has to be translated. Of course, we're local people, so we know how to rebrand it. I mean, not rebrand it, but edit the images and how to make a product appealing to the local population, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you get the things going on without stressing. It's turnkey solution.
Yeah. Well, I've got a friend. He lives in Japan. Adam, you might actually know him. It's Gary Huang. And so he's got 7-Figure Seller Summit. And he says you have to Japanify your listings. So in this case, you're just saying the same thing. You got to Mexify them.
Yeah.
Or Latamify actually would be a better one, because you've got different countries down there, right? I'm sure each country has its own nuances and how you would want to present the data in that listing, yeah?
Yeah,
Or
not
is it
only
just
that,
one?
well, there is no translation on the images. If you go to any product in Mexico, they're not even translating the images into Spanish.
Yeah.
So bad it is. And talking about cost per click and ads, we have a client that is doing 300,000 a month on sales, and it has a TACOS of 1.5, 1.6.
That's old days.
And it's
numbers.
not supplement, it's not consumable.
Awesome.
It happens.
Yeah. So what kind of products are moving well in Mexico? Like what categories?
I would say pretty much the same as you see in US.
Okay.
For Mexican people, US products are aspirational and the type of living. So all the brands that are doing well in US, they're running well in Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there's only a couple of things you got to be mindful of, because we're now in the year of 2025, in the age of trade wars, and Mexico's fighting back with certain niches, but it's not as crazy as you would think. Like, the free trade agreement between the U.S. and Mexico for a lot of products made in the USA getting into Mexico is not a problem. But to piggyback on what Freddie said, pretty much everything, there's just a couple of things that you just got to maybe do a little bit extra paperwork, or you got to get your permission, like supplements, topicals, anything you eat. You just got to get the permission. It takes 4 or 5 weeks, and during that 4 or 5 weeks, Freddie and I, we're getting everything ready. So then when you get that permission, you get your inventory over, get it into the fulfillment center, and then we just launch from there. So it's, 2-month, 2.5-month max process. So you can say, okay, in 10 weeks, I'm going to launch a brand new marketplace. That's pretty quick, less than a quarter.
And apparel, like clothing, that's another segment that it takes a little bit more time because they want to, protect their local. But it just takes a little bit longer, but that's it.
Well, I, like a few others in this industry, I think a bigger barrier to entry is better for brands because once you go through that hurdle, you have something of a moat around you. But then of course, now you're only competing with more sophisticated sellers. But it does separates the wheat from the chaff, if you will. So let's see. Let's talk about, you kind of answered this question. My next question was, what can you expect in the Mexican market? So you basically just said, well, you can expect it to be the same as the US. Is there anything else you'd like to comment on that?
Yeah, and the amount of sales, we expect between 5 and 8% of what you're doing in US. So right now it's smaller than Canada, but it's growing faster, way faster. So, and also we are only talking about Amazon. As you know, Mercado Libre is right there. Once you have the products in Mexico, we just switch to another warehouse and you have another 6 or 8% on Mercado Libre with the same, pretty much the same listings. And they have SBA.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and they have pretty much the same systems. I mean, you send inventory to their warehouse and we manage the listings and the sales and the customer service, because something that is different is on Amazon, people just purchase the stuff, and if you don't like it or I thought it was bigger or whatever, you just return it. But people don't usually ask before purchasing. In Mercado Libre, people ask a lot of questions, and once, okay, I'm sure, then they purchase a product, but they don't have a high amount of return. This is a cultural thing because back in the days, returning the product was a pain in the back because you have to pay the fees, you have to put it in a box. So no one wants to return a product. Once you have it, you keep it pretty much. So it's a cultural thing. So it's funny because it demands a lot of customer service for that platform.
Yeah, I wish in many ways, I wish that American culture was a little bit more like that. And I know exactly what you're talking about because that's how we operate today. When Amazon got flooded with a bunch of Chinese listings, and this is before the time that they were listing out the address of all the companies and stuff like that, you just didn't know. You still just don't know. Sometimes they don't give you dimensions. Sometimes not every listing is the same, right? And so you have to buy these. You can't pick them up and compare apples to apples and find out that one's an orange. You have to actually buy it, receive it, get it, and return it. And so that's exactly what I did. So, for instance, this is an Anchor, I had to buy 3 of them to find out that this was the one that I wanted, because Anchor doesn't say this is version 1, 2, 3. They just give different numbers. And I have no idea. They're all 5,500 milliamp hours. But which one is the one that I want? One of them, and this was the smallest and the lightest. So I can assume, okay, this is the one with the lithium battery, not the one with the lead acid battery, and that's the one I wanted. But I couldn't find that data on Amazon. Anchor's a great brand.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, the Anchor Solix, their, I guess, sister company or something like that, sponsors my group and I with their huge battery banks for off-roaders. So and I've got three of those, and the Anchor, 3 different brands, and my Anchor is my favorite one. It's by far the best. But the point being is I had to buy 3 of these to find out this is the one that I wanted and then return the rest. That's expensive for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I'm pretty much the same. And I don't take the time to ask questions. On me as a buyer, I have to say I'm pretty much behave like an American in terms of I purchase like an impulsively.
How dare you?
I have to take 20 seconds to buy a product. It cannot take more,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why. I could ask the question, maybe
Again,
purchase it
culture.
tomorrow. It's a cultural stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been indoctrinated into the American culture. And look, Amazon does make it really convenient, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, cuz like with my camping blankets, not all the time, but enough for me to go, what the hell? People would buy my blankets, they're like $100, and then they would return them with a claim that they're broken, right? Or there's something wrong with it, and they would return them with mud and hair, dog hair on them. And it's just like they bought them, they went camping, and they returned it, So I could conceivably, because of Amazon's policies, I could buy $5,000 of camping equipment, go use it, and return it. And that's it. It cost me nothing in the end, right? So that's the part that sucks. Anyhow, moving on, I'm going to give you my last question. What are the benefits or what benefits for brands? What benefits are brands seeing by launching into Mexico? If they go Amazon Mexico, 5 to 8% increase in sales. If they include Mercado Libre, another 6 to 8%. So you can increase by 10 to 12% or whatever, 10 to 15, let's call it. What additional benefits are brands seeing?
One thing that a lot of people don't really think about, and I was talking with a brand yesterday about, is that now with global reviews, global ratings, if you're selling well in Mexico, it's only going to help out your reviews and your review count in the US and Canada. And then, now they've added in, Brazil to the North American Seller Central. So that right there, that's another lift. That's another thing to help out your account as a whole. You're diversified, which helps as well. And then when they're getting down here, some brands like, we want to say 5 to 8%, but there's brands that they're doing 40 some percent of what they're selling in the States, and they're close to an 8-figure brand. So that was significant, because, under promise, over deliver, we don't want to shoot for the moon, but you can expect 5 to 8 consistently, minimum.
Yeah. Look, when I do review removal, I say 5 to 15%. On average, I'm 5 to 10. I've been at 34%. But yeah, you want to give realistic expectations. And if you can go outside of those numbers, then hey, they're happy.
Also, too, another benefit that they're seeing in the Amazon marketplace is that they're seeing just less competition ease into a market. They don't have to get crazy with a bunch of different traffic sources. And then now, as of last week, they can really diversify your brand. In just Mexico alone, TikTok Shop Mexico launched last week. So you're saying that, okay, I can get into Mexico and I have a brand. And now with AI capabilities and technology, I've got all of these videos. I can add in subtitles in Spanish or, other capabilities with audio. So you can launch on 3 different marketplaces now in Mexico. All you got to do is just get your paperwork at the beginning. And that's the big benefit of getting your tax ID, the RFC. So as soon as you got that, you're ready to go because you already have permission to import and you have your compliance piece. And you've already done your import customs, so you have everything ready. You just got to send in more inventory, and then 3 more marketplaces. So that's huge.
Yeah.
Freddie, what else do we see?
Adding to that, now that I see, so I said, like, why haven't we started this before? Mexico is just a backyard of US. You can send the inventory by sea, by plane, by car, by bicycle if you want. It's so close to it.
By mule? Sorry, bad joke.
Why anything? It just depends on the size of the product. But actually, Amazon has a warehouse, and Amazon partners have the warehouse in the US, and they process for you. So you don't need to do the paperwork or take it out of the US. Yeah, you just send it to Laredo or somewhere else. I don't recall exactly the name of the city, and they cross it for you. So once you have, as Adam mentioned, your brand and paperwork and products in Mexico, you have 2 things to upgrade. You can go to the stores. B2B sales is a thing still in Mexico. By having inventory there is super easy. We can connect you to Liverpool and other replay players and retailers. And also, as we mentioned, Mercado Libre. So Mercado Libre is also big in the rest of Latin America. So you can
Mhm.
keep scaling in Mercado Libre, Mexico, Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil, Chile, etc. Inside Mercado Libre, there is something called CBT, which is cross-border trader. So once you have the inventory in one Mercado Libre, like Mexico, it is much easier for you to keep, expanding into the rest of Latin America. So Mexico is like the opening door for a new era or a new place where brand can expand.
All right. So one last question here before we wrap it up. You say there's TikTok Shop Mexico, there's Mercado Libre, and then there's Amazon. So that sounds like 3 different warehouses that I have to send my product into. Are we going to see a future where there's one 3PL that handles all the distribution of that product, or perhaps you'll just use FBA? Because I know that Amazon has partnered, or in some capacity, with TikTok. They announced it at the last Accelerate. Where do you guys see that going? Because I see that, for me personally, I see that as an administrative exercise. I would bordering on nightmare for me. Like when I was selling in the US and the UK and Germany, I would rather just not make that extra money than spend all the extra time I had to spend to make sure that all that stuff was happening properly. And I still screwed it up. So where do we see this going? Is there going to be some conglomerate, so that you can, or maybe a software that you can manage all of that stuff from one place?
It's a good question.
That's a good question. I don't know of one at the moment, but as we've seen the acceleration the past years with Amazon FBA for Shopify, for TikTok. I just read this morning on a blog, Amazon legally was like, oh, we're a logistics company. We're not in. So with them and Mercado Libre, getting into these warehouses is getting easier and easier compared to how you used to have to deal with it. I've launched 2 brands into Europe. I know the headaches of dealing with that over there. I dealt with it before Brexit and I dealt with it post Brexit. So, I know your headache there.
I only did pre-Brexit. Yeah, I only did pre-Brexit.
Yeah, so I've done that and I've seen that headache. Whereas now they're making it easier. Getting into these warehouses, even easier. And then that's where we come in and we do the white glove service and we make it as easy as possible and the least amount of headache. Because like Freddie said earlier, so many people said, getting in Latin America is such a pain in the for certain things. Exactly. Such a pain in the capybara. And with that, that's where we come in and say, okay, us, Amazon, and a vetted Amazon partner. You got 3 teams on your side to help you get it in. All you got to do is get your inventory to Laredo, Texas. Then from there, we get into Mexico and take it from there.
Cool.
A little bit of paperwork,
and so,
a little bit there.
And where are people going to go to find you guys? How do they talk to you?
They can go to our website, capybaras.agency. You can find us both on LinkedIn as well.
Okay. And Freddie, can you tell people your last name so people can find you? Because if I search Freddie on LinkedIn, I'll find 580 bajillion of them.
It's Freddie Neumann, Neuman.
Okay, cool. Neuman. Cool. And Adam Pixler, like pixels. Cool. Well, any parting words for the audience, for you guys?
Yeah, if you're interested, come to us. We'll give you a free market audit and we'll check to see if your brand is actually, if there's some meat on the bone down here. There's some things that there's not a market yet. And we'll let you know. We're here to help people and serve people. So here we'll check out, see how you're doing in the potential in Amazon Mexico and Mercado Libre. We'll get back with you with it.
Awesome. Cool. Guys, thanks for being on. I learned quite a bit here. Now you've got me thinking that I need to look into going into Mexico with this. So that, once again, that's capybaras.agency for the website. Freddie Neumann, Adam Pixler, thanks so much for coming on the show, guys. I appreciate it. And
thanks a lot,
Stick around because we're going to talk about Mexico a little bit more.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks,
all right.
everyone.
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
You bet. Bye.